Sure, like some more like stories we tell ourselves. Gonna make things up, make up good things.
Oh, we could do that. That's a good one, actually,
Yeah.
because I've been reading more of the Anti-Fragile. Have you gone deeper in Anti-Fragile yet?
Not very fucking no.
Yeah. I listened for like 5 minutes the other day.
Okay.
Other things, I'm going to throw these out there before I forget.
Hit 'em.
We can go into what you were on. But let's see, we talked about swag for Disruptive Mind.
Oh, yeah.
And then
obviously.
I also threw out the idea of literally getting a little pot. It's just like the idea pot. And so you put the ideas in there and pull them out and grow them. And they come from everybody that's watching or listening. And
So what do? Do we make like a web app or something that's literally you just go to a domain and you like type in an idea and it just like puts it in the idea pot and the brain just gets bigger?
yeah,
That would be cool.
we can get there. For right now, it's like just comment.
Yeah, just like tell us that's what you want to talk
Throw it in
about.
the pot.
Ideas you have.
There was one where a guy had commented about working through some mental health issues and all that. And it's like, we can cover that one. But so, anti-fragility, stories we tell ourselves, swag, disruptive mind thought. Okay.
Wow, you set an agenda for the meeting. Way to go.
We just made it up.
Way to go. Way to go. Anti-Fragile. I was reading it over the weekend. And every time I read that book, there's new things that pop out at me. Every time. It's one of those books that's just like so cool that way. And he goes on this rant about people who are statisticians and modelers who create models. And he talks about how when you're creating a model, you always think about the worst case scenario. So the worst drop in stocks ever, the worst interest rate environment,
Yes.
the you know what I mean, the worst world war. And he talks about,
now.
yeah, there you go, right? Isn't it so interesting? So he says, the weird thing that these guys never get through their heads is at the time that those worst things happened, they exceeded the worst thing at the time, right? And he has an effect that it's in my head now that I haven't picked up on before. So he always has these things like the Wendy effect. So he calls it the Lucretius effect, Lucretius.
Okay.
She says, I've called this mental defect. It's a mental defect. It's even worse. This is if we're talking disruptive mind, this is just like a problem that people have.
Okay.
So he says, I called this mental defect the Lucretian problem after the Latin poetic philosopher who wrote that the fool believes that the tallest mountain in the world will be equal to the tallest one he has observed. That just blew me away because it's not just statisticians, right? Statisticians do that. They say, okay, yeah, the worst thing we've ever experienced or observed in history is equal to the worst thing in, the worst possible case scenario. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about stories we tell ourselves, we do that in our own personal lives. Every molehill becomes a mountain if it's our molehill, right? For us, it's like, oh, this is the worst thing that has happened to me in my life. Or even if it's the best thing that's happened to me in my life, the fool assumes that that's the tallest mountain because it's the tallest one we've ever observed.
Good.
So the stories we tell ourselves need to be, in my mind, there will be another one.
True. Yeah. Some of the effects that come from the best or worst moments are we're like, if it's bad, we say it's never going to get better again. And if it's really good, we're like, it'll never be this good again.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Those are the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. I feel like we also, one way that we tell stories to ourselves, we exaggerate a lot in our culture.
Yes.
Hyperbole, exaggeration for the sake of emphasis. Like we do it all the time. It's hot as blank. Like,
You been to hell before, buddy?
yeah. Yeah, and we use it in good ways, bad ways, weird ways, but I think we've kind of, actually, get this. In origin, I think it was exaggeration was, I'm not going to say a good thing, but it was culturally like how you kind of showed honor in a way.
Interesting.
There's a story where someone, please give me all the details that I don't remember correctly, but the purpose of the story, I know I'm going to nail. All the little details, probably going to get wrong. So someone was coming from somewhere on the eastern side of my map to the western side of the map, and they found these people that they couldn't communicate with, had no clue. I want to say it's the Spanish meeting the South Americans. I don't know. Anyway, they couldn't communicate with them. So they go and they find translators, and they come back, and the translator, they had to bring two because it was coming from one language to another language to another language. So they bring the two, and by the time I got through that translation, the new people that had come to visit got from the kingdom, anything you have, anything you can see is yours, so take it. In that culture, their standard was like, that was how they showed honor. They would say like, well, I'll give you anything. Like, it's the lady that breaks the knife says perfume over Jesus. They're like, yes, let me show you the nicest things. Have them, take them. The other side of that honor is that people are also honorable enough to be like, oh, thank you for saying that. I'm also not going to partake.
Yeah.
And that's how I show the honor back. That didn't translate here.
Yeah.
And so they literally just
Took the whole thing.
demolished the whole city, took all their stuff, all their garments, like all of it.
Thinking that they had permission. Like, yeah, they told us.
Yeah.
It was all ours.
How to relate that to stories that we tell ourselves. I think for showing honor to like other people, sure, it's great to exaggerate. Sometimes I think our exaggerations there may even propel us to do things that are more generous. But whenever you're telling stories to yourself, don't exaggerate. Don't minimize. Try to be accurate.
The man who lies to himself in private will eventually lie to others in public. That's the motto for like CEOs and stuff.
There we go. Yeah.
I think what's so interesting about that story, I've never heard that story before, but what's really interesting about it is they heard what they wanted to hear. Like, we know that they were like, hey, we would love to conquer this land. That had to have been in the back of their mind in the first place.
Yeah.
What's curious about it is they say, anything in our land is yours. Now, that could have been like, hey, how about a gift? Pick one thing out of here and it's yours. Like, take anything out of the land, it's yours. But rather, they read it as like, everything in the land is yours, maybe. Or, you know what I mean? Like, you hear when you're in a conversation with somebody, it can be interpreted many different ways, the things they say or what they mean. And oftentimes you hear what you want to hear, not what's being said. I fall victim to that all the freaking time.
Yeah, we all do.
All the times.
It's going, doesn't really relate to the best or worst times. I think it's more about the I don't know where I was going with that, honestly, because you were talking about how we don't consider enough information. You know, okay, here, something similar about both of them. It's like both the statisticians and these conquerors didn't like consider more information.
That's it. They don't
More to it, yeah.
Yes.
Taking a little time.
Oh, the framing, this isn't really necessary to the statisticians, but I really like the story you told because it makes me think of the framing. What about stories you tell yourself before entering into the story? So let's say you have a meeting with your boss, a annual review meeting, and you're telling yourself a story beforehand of like, my boss hates me. These review meetings are always awful. I always feel judged. They're always so mean. And you get into the meeting and your boss goes, Dylan, I know you're trying, but if you could just do X, Y, Z a little better, I could justify getting you a bigger bonus. Now, you walk out of that meeting because you've already told a certain story. You walk out of that meeting thinking, they told me they're not going to give me a bonus this year because they hate the way I do X, Y, Z.
Yep.
Instead of, I have an opportunity to do X, Y, Z in order to get the bonus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's bad.
It is bad. It's a very common practice, though, I'd say.
Yeah.
We make up one story about a situation and then we act on that instead of coming up with multiple potentials and then trying to see, okay, what did I actually get? Where does it fit best? Like which story? Interesting practice, I think. If you have a bad story about some event that has happened or one that will happen, tell a good story about it. And if you can't, I feel like your bad story is just you lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Or being cheap and like not trying to like be like, oh, I just want to be in pity. It's like, yeah, if you can't tell a good story, I don't care. You made up the bad story, go make up the good story and see which one you want to deal with.
That hits home. That's perfect. That is very interesting. It's almost like it should be a practice. There should be 2 practices for everybody. And one of these you probably don't watch the show Billions, do you?
Yep.
It's a very interesting show.
Billions?
Billions.
Netflix? Amazon? HBO?
Netflix, maybe? I think probably Netflix. I have a website that has them all. Okay. By the way, if anybody on YouTube wants access to that, just hit me up. I'll give it to you. So I don't know what it's on. It might be on HBO too. I actually have no clue. But point is, it's a kind of drama series, I guess, about money managers and attorney generals and like the battle between government and capitalism, I guess is what you would say. But in it, there's this very interesting scene where just a incredibly smart attorney, she's kind of like I don't know what you call them, not main characters, but like very good support characters. I don't know. She's definitely a top-notch support character in the show. She realizes that somebody's been manipulating her. And the way she realizes it is she goes up to kind of the boss man and she's like, hey, I realized this manipulation was occurring. And he's like, how do you know? And she says, well, I did my weekly review of my decision making. And I realized that the decisions I were making were not mine. They were given to me by the same person. So the same person had met her in an elevator and told her to do something, had met her in the office and told her to do something at different times. But every week she went through and said, what decisions did I make this week? How did I come to those decisions? Yeah. And then she found a single point that was like, that's it. So everybody should be doing that practice. I was like, dang, that'd be huge. Nobody does that. Nobody does postpartum on their own decision making.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. Great practice. Makes me think of the concept of like self-made or like independent.
Yeah.
Which are both impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. They're both impossible.
We've gone over this a little bit.
Stand on the shoulders of giants kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so maybe you're standing on something so big, you literally just can't even recognize what you're standing on.
That's exactly right.
You can't recognize the shape of Earth because you're literally too small standing on it.
So true.
But yeah, it's conversations you have. Other people are going to put sentences in front of you that are going to influence the things that you do.
Yes.
It's going to happen. Oh, I make my own decisions. Yes. Based on all the data that
Inputs.
Everything else gave you. And to think that you are in control of all the inputs that come in front of your life?
Crazy.
Crazy. You can manage a lot of them, but you cannot control every input that comes your way.
Yep.
You can't. So
it's interesting practice, isn't it? To just edit and review the inputs and be like, what decisions did I make that turned out sour for me? What were the inputs? Where did they come from? And you can start to draw lines to like, oh, these inputs are hurting me. Okay.
Start simple. Like, oh, I just bought this thing. I bought a new pair of shoes. Oh, dang, like Jimmy, Braden, and Danny all showed me their new shoes this week.
Yeah. And so-and-so told me my shoes were dirty. And
I mean, I guess I made the decision, but it was based on
yeah. If you can critically think about yourself,
yeah,
that's disruptive. Number 2 is preemptive.
Okay.
2 things I've heard. One, I heard a guy talk about meetings and getting prepared for meetings. And he said, and I think this is extreme, but he said, and he does real estate, wholesaling real estate, which is just tough business. But He said that he does an hour of preparation before every meeting that he has. So he schedules his calendar apart, and he says, so for example, if he's about to get on a call with a residential homeowner that he wants to flip their house, do a wholesale in their house, he says that he does an hour digging deep to do all of the research about the home that he needs, and then he goes in the meeting completely open, acting like he doesn't know a single thing. Hey, yeah, so do you know like price per square foot in your area, or like, you know, what how many houses are there around you, and what kind of comps are there? You know, just like kind of prodding just to see if they know what they're talking about or whatever. But so that's a combination with, I had heard of a guy, I think it might be Nassim Taleb. He didn't say it in a book. I think he said it in a YouTube video where he talked about the art of scenario analysis and alternate histories in your meditation. And he said, it's somebody that did this somebody talked about this with like Stoics, because, you know, Stoicism's the big thing now. And they're like, oh yeah, Stoics. And the big deal about the Stoics, or one of the big deals about them, is they would meditate and think of all scenarios that could happen. So they would meditate on their family dying and losing all of their money and all of that, and live out those scenarios in their head, tell the story, so that if something happened, it wasn't emotional, I've never seen this before. So if you combine those two, there's something interesting about everything you do throughout your day. If you spend 15 minutes before you go into a meeting and think, okay, what are all the things that could happen in this meeting that are good? What are all the things that could happen that are bad? What scenarios are most likely? When you go into the meeting, maybe you're open. Maybe you're not like the guys conquering someplace in the West, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're open to all the different scenarios that they could be talking about, and you're able to question better and understand better, and probably less susceptible to bad decisions whenever you do your post-decision journaling.
Agreed. Yeah, if you can hold both the good and bad going into the moment, yeah, you won't be swayed in the moment.
Yeah, you're not telling one story going in. You've told 10, and now you're just checking to see which story ends up playing out.
Okay. Applying that to our current season in America. Halloween.
Okay.
All this stuff. Scary movies are prevalent. Haunted houses are prevalent. I have this theory. If you know it's a movie, why you get so scared? Like that to me is one of the prime examples of, like, you know that you're literally sitting in a safe room in front of a screen watching a movie, but somehow your emotions can overpower everything around you to make your heart rate go up, to make your adrenaline happen, to make you like imagine things are happening.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
I mean, I may debate some people to say that, like, scary movies aren't the problem. It's your reactions to them that are the problem. If you can't, like, if the fear gets into you because you've seen the scary movie, because you saw these little lights on the screen, look out.
When it hits you in real life, you're going to be real
When it
bad.
hits you in real life, what's going to happen then? Like, this is a controlled environment. Like, all the variables are managed.
Yep.
So I don't know.
There's an element to that is so Fooled by Randomness is another book by Nassim Taleb, where he talks about people's need to be tricked. They almost have a need or a desire to be tricked, to be amazed, like, call it miracle, call it magic, whatever it is. Like, they have a need to feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the problem is that a lot of people do that in areas where it's very detrimental to them. So I'm somebody who has a need for magical scenarios, or like crazy scenarios to happen. So I go buy a bunch of lottery tickets. Well, that's bad for me because I'm spending a bunch of money on something I shouldn't be doing, or whatever it is, or I gamble my money in the stock market, whatever's happening. He says that you can't escape that, but you can control it by funneling it into things that aren't going to hurt you. So if you have a deep need for high chance, high stakes money games, don't put all your money in the stock market, but supply yourself a little bit of money quarter by quarter and go to Vegas with it. And just like get that itch, get that scratch out of you, right?
Yeah.
So there's something about that with the scary movies, and I don't know what it is about people, but maybe that's just like they need that to scratch some itch that's like they're not going to get it in real, or they don't want to get it in real life, and they're like, okay, but I want that thrill, you know? And so I'm willing to go trick myself. Like that's what entertainment is. Like I'm willing to go trick myself because I need to scratch that, whatever that is, but I don't want to like do it in a high risk game.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I hear you. That would be. Makes me think though that like if you have those itches,
You got a problem.
well, you gotta. I don't know. It makes me think like the movie is just like a Band-Aid. Like,
It is.
yeah,
It is.
yeah. Like the rash is still there. You're just-
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, I like that.
But the rash is still there then.
Yeah. The bug bite's still there. You just threw some ointment on it for a little bit, but it's still there.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
I think we've got to like the stories that we tell ourselves will influence how we act in a situation to where then we will change the outcome. So therefore the stories we tell ourselves are changing the outcome.
Yes. And I really love what you said about telling mini stories. Like that is a practice that I used to do whenever I was really into the fund and the fund was up and running. Especially there was a moment where the fund was up like 110%. It was like, it was rolling and I felt good. And every day I would sit there and meditate like, okay, it just went to zero. Like, what now? Like, and so over time, as things shook up and changed, like I was able to limit my emotional response to things not going my way. And that I think is the key of telling multiple stories. If it goes back to the Chinese guy, right? And the Chinese story itself, the Chinese farmer story itself, it's like that dude must have told himself all the different types of stories that could play out every single time something happened in his life so that he could stay at a 7 and be like, yeah, well, maybe like I can tell 5 stories of where this thing goes good and 5 stories of where this thing goes bad. So just, yeah, maybe we'll write it out.
The son breaking his arm is bad if he has an arm wrestling competition next week. It's pretty good if the military is trying to recruit people and he doesn't want to go.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you tell all those stories, and how many layers deep you can get in those stories matters too. It's like, yeah, if you can preempt multiple nodes of sways in the story between good and bad, there's something about it where it's like, sorry, I'm going to think off the top of my head a rebuttal to this, which is, but then you aren't writing your own story. You're just outlaying a bunch of different stories and playing the game of watching which one plays out.
So, back to what we said earlier about how you're not 100% independent.
Yeah.
So, to say that you 100% write your own story is not true.
Yep. I think you're right.
Like, we got dropped in the middle of the book
Yeah.
as a character.
Watch it play out and be happy as it goes.
Yeah.
There is a false sense of control, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in software. I definitely am.
There's a false sense of control.
That's like the domain where we're like, let's control as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. And watch it break over and over and over again.
And then, struggle and get mad and then have everyone yell at it because it doesn't work.
Yeah. It leads, so that there's a good tie into here. It's like that what's the word I'm looking for? Illusion of control turns into the do something syndrome, where you feel like you have to be doing something to write the story. And so the story's going to go the way the story's going to go. But here you are in some subtext of the story or the footnotes just picking away with an axe at something different, even though the story's already written how it's going to happen. And yeah, you just frustrate yourself. You know, you're constantly acting, moving, trying to do something when you could have just at the same time sat there and done nothing and would have gotten just as far.
The you know about the businessman and the fisherman story?
No.
Oh man, that's another good one. Businessman going out to go. I don't know why this actually, interestingly enough, I don't know why the story starts off this way, but a businessman goes out to a dock and sees a fisherman out there having a little wine and cooking up his catch of the day. And he's like, "Hey, you caught that yourself?" Fisherman goes, "Yeah, sure did." He's like, I bet if you showed me like how many fish you catch per day and how much that cost, I bet I could make a plan so you could get enough boats and hire enough people so they would catch enough fish and you'd make enough money to where you could do that all day. The fisherman says, "Dude, I'm green. I want to catch fish, cook fish, and drink wine. I'm already there." He's like, "Yeah, but you could do it all the time." He's like, "No, I can't. I'd be bored, not hate it." I don't remember how it ends actually, so I'm riffing. But it's like the guy was trying to give the guy do something syndrome for something
He was.
already solved.
He was.
Yeah, he was like, "I heard I have the answer.
I'm doing it as we
I'm
speak.
in the
Why
answer.
are you?
And you're trying to make me do all this to get exactly right back to where I am."
Oh man, I'm so guilty of being the businessman in that scenario. So guilty.
I mean, but it's done appropriately. It's fun.
Yeah.
And it can be done with love, and it's like it's an adventure, it's a game, and it's creative.
Yep.
If you're trying to like make someone do it because you think it's what they should do, that's
It's bad when you're selling people to do it.
Yeah.
If they want to do it, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
But that is an interesting take on do something syndrome for sure. I feel like who was it that we had conversations with recently? I don't remember, but it tied into the consulting I was doing for Friend Filter. And what was so interesting about Friend Filter was it turned into the same thing. And luckily the guy listened to me when I talked to him about this. So we were doing Friend Filter. We're trying to get new people on the platform. We're trying to build out the platform, do all this stuff. And really what it came down to was it was like, man, the only way this thing grows is by handing this over to somebody that like builds webinars, connects with other affiliates, and does all of that, right? And we agreed. We're like, yeah, that's right. But at the same time, every week, there were new projects or ideas popping up of like, well, let's start a newsletter. Let's build out more features. Let's do this. And every time more money was dumped in and it didn't change anything. The answer was always still, no, we just need the affiliates guys to just like do their thing. And what it came down to was it was like, yeah, we could have sat there and done absolutely nothing and gotten the exact same results. Mm-hmm. But instead we felt like we had to continue drumming something up because we weren't happy being patient and just waiting for the results to come. So it's just so practical in business and in life how people do that.
it's I think during a lot of that you enjoyed it.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, It was a good time.
So it's like
You have fun.
cool. It's when you're not that I'm like,
You just didn't have to do that, bud. You just didn't have to.
it's okay. This brings me to one of my favorite questions. If you didn't have, so all the money you ever need is guaranteed, and you don't have to do anything for it for the rest of your life. What do you do with your life?
A lot of what I do now, I write for sure, probably a bunch of different things, and I study business. Like those are the things that I just love to freaking do. What are yours?
Well, let's finish the thing real quick.
Okay.
How much do you do those now?
The writing's the one I don't do a lot right now. I study business a lot right now, so I do that. I'm heavy on that. between those two items, 50% of my time, probably.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
it is. It's probably better than what a lot of people are at.
I agree. So the question is designed to just help take inventory on like, what do I really want to do? How far away am I?
Yeah.
Because if the goal is to stop working, it's like, well, let me rephrase. If you think that stopping working is going to like solve all your problems and make your life happy, it's like, I don't think that's it. There's going to be something after that. And if you don't look for what's after that, well, one, if you don't look at that, you might miss out on all the time you could actually do that today.
True.
If you're like, oh, well, I'm trying to finish working so I can get to that, it's like, you could probably do that today.
You're probably already there. Yeah.
Just like the fisherman. The guy was like, yeah, in 20 years, you could have 5 boats and 10 employees and you could be, drinking wine and eating fish. And he was like, but if that's my goal, I can do that right now and not spend the 20 years trying to get to just doing that same thing.
And take inventory at the same time doing it. It's like, oh yeah, well, I also probably don't need that super expensive car. Like if I didn't have that, I could be doing what I want to do. Like it really puts priorities into perspective for sure. So what are yours then?
I like to try new things, which generally is expensive. I like to make music. I like to make stuff up.
Yeah.
Make up videos. I like to play with thoughts. So,
Can you sit around and think all day?
yeah, well, but I'd also have to be in community to make sure I don't go completely psycho and come up with absurd theories that make no sense. Yeah, so not too far off.
Yeah, it's really not far off from what you do.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
That's rare though, right? And you sacrifice things for that. It's not like we are, multi-millionaires out here with 4 houses and a boat and all that stuff. Like we could be the ultimate hustlers and like grinding to get to a place where we do that. I think what people don't understand is when you're doing that, it's so simple to be content. So simple to be content, which is kind of bad and kind of good at the same time. I don't know how content you are, but me, I'm like, yeah, okay, it's a good day. I had a good day. Like I'm not over, been out of shape and pissed off because it's like, oh, it was another day. I didn't grind through this and get this done. So now I'm disappointed with myself. It's like, it was fun.
Yes. I get a couple of those days.
Do you?
Yeah.
How many bad days do you have in like, say a month?
Oh gosh. Three or four.
3 or 4? Yeah. Are those days where you do too much or do too little?
Those are days where I imagine doing more than is humanly possible.
And can't? And that frustrates you?
Days where the story does not align with reality and it, boom, it blows up in my face. And I'm like, why? How did I not get the 98 things on my...
It's done?
Oh, because it takes 126 hours that doesn't exist today. Oh, okay.
That's interesting. Mine's my bad days, and I probably have 3 or 4 of them a month, are days where I did nothing, but it's not days where like I tried to do a lot and just didn't hit how much I wanted to do. Those days I still always see as wins. I'm like, yeah, cool. I like knock stuff out. Like I got things done. It's the days where I just find myself like I just laid on the couch all day. And I'm like, okay, that was bad. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like some people, I wonder, I would be curious how many people in our audience have less than 10 bad days in a month. I feel like many of them, it's almost like every work day is a bad day. It doesn't matter what they get done or what they don't get done. And the problem is it's because they didn't get to access doing the things that make the fit. They didn't get to access fishing and drinking wine.
Mm-hmm. Because they had the bad days, and so therefore they did neither.
Maybe, yeah, or like,
back to it, then it's like, well, I have to do the work one.
or they're just not optimizing for it. Like you can have a job and work and still have good days because you got to do the thing that you expected to do, but not whenever you get caught up in chasing the Joneses or doing other things outside of the work that distract you from doing those things you want to do.
True.
You can go to work and come home and be a musician. Maybe. Or maybe you go home from work and immediately have to go to your second job because you bought a house that was too expensive for you, or cars that were too expensive for you, or maybe you went out and had to go shop because Jimmy and Braden and Dylan showed you their new shoes and you were like, I got to go get new shoes instead of playing music. You know, like they optimize for the wrong things.
Yeah.
So 3 to 4 is good, dude. Like that's solid in my mind. If they were all good days, they wouldn't be good days.
That's right. You must have contrast.
Must have contrast. Anyway, that's cool. What's next on our list? We need to talk a little bit about. We have just a few more minutes. We need to talk a little bit about swag, or the idea bowl.
Idea swag. Just keep it simple, bro.
I would love to get a drink. I think that was the coolest idea ever.
By the way, this drink, London Fog. Ever heard of such a thing?
No.
I think it's actually just like the standard European practice, but it's tea with milk in it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I do that.
Okay.
They call it the London Fog.
At least Earl Grey tea with
Milk.
Usually
Interesting.
made into a more frothy, like latte style. Probably just growing up in Houston, Texas, that was not part of my cultural.
Never seen that one before.
I was like, oh. But yeah, I didn't have any coffee this week, so.
Are you cutting out coffee?
Yeah.
Why? What are your thoughts about it? What are you trying to
It's one
do?
of those things that like I don't believe in, but I do it because like culturally, it's like I'm gonna sit down and have a drink with you, like I'm gonna drink a coffee, but then I've gotten into the habit of just doing it on my own, even though I'm like, it tastes good, but it.
I cut out coffee once for like, I think it was a month roughly. And the expectation was, I don't remember if people told me or if I just like made this up or saw it on Twitter or something. The idea was like, oh, if you quit coffee, you're going to feel so much better and you're going to have more energy and yada, yada, yada. And I quit and I just didn't feel different. It was like, it was the same. And so I was like, okay, I'm the same with it. I'm the same without it. I don't know why I chose to continue going with it, but I do. But I've truly felt the same both ways. I was just like, okay, it doesn't do much. So,
Yeah.
okay, it's not a health thing or anything like that. It's just what you find yourself having coffee in the morning at home, and you're like, this can't be good. It's a habit now.
I guess like, like 3 or 4 cups of cold brew, and I'm just like,
Okay, that's crazy though.
I'm like, what am I doing? Like, because it's not helping me
Yeah.
at all. A lot of science would argue that all it does is it either inhibits or stimulates the adenosine receptors, which are the energy your body's already produced for that day. So all you're doing is using the energy you have for that day sooner. I mean, it's like, okay, I agree. Like, if you give me a cup that literally supplements my energy to go over and above what I have available, then we'll talk. But it's like coffee is just like using what I already got. So
Yeah.
I think I can do that myself.
Now we're talking about a good disruptive mind drink, which would be something that inputs more.
So yeah, just like straight ATP or something like, and like, yeah,
That'd be cool, actually.
put just like ATP, a little bit of dopamine, literally just put brain chemicals.
Fascinating. It's fascinating. How about a little shrooms in there?
Yeah.
That'll be disruptive. That'll really get them going. I heard something recently. I'm surprised we haven't figured this out yet, biologically, biotechnology. I heard that there is not a single known chemical or element that goes into our body, like through eating or drinking, that is used in that form within our body. all elements and chemicals are refined in our intestines. Like, just like you can't go to West Texas, pull oil out of the top of the wellhead and put it in your car and your car run, right? It has to be refined into something different. I'm surprised we haven't figured out how to refine those things before they enter our body and just take them straight up as usable form. Or if that even works. Seems like it would. Like if you could just straight up do ATP, a cup of ATP, and be like, here you go, we're juiced up. That'd be interesting.
I feel like we have to have come up with the chemical compounds outside of the body. I know getting past the digestive system is an issue.
It's a problem.
Or getting past the stomach in particular is an issue for a lot. So maybe some eye drops. So I don't know. Yeah, that'd be fun. A drink though.
It's a swag drink that's coming. A hat's going to be cool. I'd like a sweatshirt.
Yeah.
We're going to throw it all on. We'll throw links out. We'll get it going. What else do we have on the agenda?
I think that was it. Stories we tell ourselves.
That went by really quick.
The little pot deal. Yeah.
I like the idea of the idea of the idea generator. Because there's people that have come to us, like what's this mental health deal?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I was a buddy reached out saying he wanted to work through some things and, to address it here, it's like, we need people in our lives that, like, when we can't figure out what that good story is, which I said is a bad thing. Like, it's not good to not figure out the good stories. The good thing you can do about that is go find someone and give them the authority to help you write that good story that goes along with that bad one.
So just having people in your life to tell the good story.
Yeah. And not just have people that will listen to you, but have people that you will listen to when they respond. Don't always give you things they're going to like.
Yeah, that's true, because they're going to tell you the different story, even though it's almost like we want stories to be a certain way. Misery loves company. We want the story to be bad if everybody around us also tells bad stories and we feel like we fit in. Like, oh yeah, my boss doesn't like me either. It's like, okay, now you're in a perpetual flywheel of let's all tell bad stories about how bad work is for us.
Yeah.
And then every story has to be that way for you to fit in.
It makes me back to two things. So, like, American Idol. All those people that, like, how do they get you to invest in these individuals that are competing?
Bad stories.
These, like, poor stories and, like, all the bad parts of their lives and all that. And they accentuate those.
So frustrating.
That's what our news media does. Mm-hmm. Our news media definitely spends more time on here's what's gone wrong than here's what's going great.
Even things, if they are going great, they find something to talk about that's going wrong about it.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, they're like, oh, man. I don't know. 1,000 people were cured of cancer. Dang, there's still 30 more in that clinic to go.
Uh-huh.
Goodness, I don't know. What's that other thing PC just said? Oh, so there's two things. American Idol, capitalizing on tragedy for storytelling. Where else do we get trained on this? Oh, our buddy at the bar the other day. It's not tragedy, but he would just tell the story of himself as if he was like lowly and meaningless. Now get him where he needs to go.
Yeah. That's an interesting one.
So, yeah. I don't think this quite plays into that doesn't really play into what the guy was talking about, although it can.
It could.
Actually, it's like if you can't do that for yourself, tell that story like with purpose, then you might think too highly of yourself.
True. Yeah, I think the negative storytelling around and like everybody jumping into the negative, is it like I don't know, dude. I don't know what it is that's natural about people that they like to hear the bad story, the sad story, the scary story. But even worse than that is now everybody knows that people like to hear that. And so there's there's like this mix with pride trying to also take advantage of that effect. And it's like, well, I want to have 100,000 followers. So what I got to do is I got to tell scary, sad stories. And that way everybody will engage with it. But people don't engage with happy stuff. Not in the same way.
Okay. So where have we missed it? Maybe so a bad story or a tragedy would usually precede the gaining of wisdom.
Okay. So you would look back and learn something good from it.
Yeah. I think we forget part two most of the time now. It's like, oh, people tell of the tragedy to build the wisdom. But instead, we just like, oh, the tragedy, oh, that's so bad. Oh my gosh, that was the majority of the time they spent. Like, that's where they spent all the time on the story. Like, my coach with his baby's dead analogy, like the wisdom, he told a story for like 15 minutes to us. And then he wrapped it up really quick in the end. With about 30 seconds, he goes, so here's the deal. Baby's dead, you can't bring it back. So make sure you do it right the first time and then close it up. So 15 minutes of tragedy and then 30 seconds of wisdom.
The wise quip, yeah.
And moved on.
There's this is another Taleb thing from the book that we've covered is he talks about how all of the papers, all of the psychologists, everybody studies post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Mm-hmm. And he says they don't even have a term for post-traumatic stress advancement. What about all the people that went through chaotic, stressful events and that made them stronger and made them better and pushed them forward?
Yeah, like he quotes in there how early like childhood and adolescent trauma oftentimes breeds high achievers.
Yeah.
Just as much as it
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we only study and focus on the ones that are like, the disorder, not the advancement. And so it's a focus, huh?
Yeah, that makes me think of the whole professional snowboarder going down the hill and he's thinking path, not don't hit that tree.
Yeah, exactly.
We're constantly saying we're staring at the trees. We don't want to hit it.
Yep.
We're like all these PTSD people. Let's stare at them. They need help. I agree. But it's like we, as in me and PTSD people, need to look at the people with the PTSA, post-traumatic stress advancement.
Dude, it's the story we tell ourselves wrapped up, which is all we do is look at negative things, negative news, negative social media, negative events, negative people around us, because those are the trees that we want to avoid. The problem is when they're the only inputs, they become the stories that we tell ourselves. We say, oh, well, I've seen this story before. This is where the boss tells the person that, they're messing up and they're not going to get their bonus this year. Mm-hmm. So I know that's what mine's going to be like now. And that's, when we're focusing on the trees, they become self-fulfilling and we hit the freaking trees rather than just path. Mm-hmm. Wow. That is very interesting. Yeah. So I guess the moral of the story is stay away from the negatives.
Yeah. Simon Sinek has a whole book on it.
Does he?
Yeah. Anybody on social media often would probably have seen his little quip.
I've seen him, but I haven't seen the quip.
He says, whenever you say a sentence with a negative in it, all you hear is the subject. So if he says, don't think about a red button. Red button pops into your brain, even though that was the one thing he said not to do. So don't hit the tree. All your brain actually thinks about is the tree. It can't think about the absence of a tree. It's like even by thinking about, if you thought about let's take it literally. If you thought about the outline of a tree, you're seeing the shape of a tree, even though there's no tree in there. So, yeah.
I like that. The professional snowboarder looks route, not tree. Yeah. He's not avoiding the trees. He's aggressively pursuing the routes.
Yeah.
The path. That's a good place to wrap it up. That's perfect.
Yeah. All right.
There's another one. The stories we tell ourselves.
Mm.